Hello everyone, welcome to Bajirao IAS Academy, the Hindu News Analysis. Today is 5th July 2024, Friday, and we have few important articles for today's discussion. So without any delay, let's start our discussion. And before starting this discussion, yesterday I have given one practice question and I've asked the people to answer this question in the comment section. So the question was, consider the following statements. This is with respect to zero FIR, right? So first statement says that in case of zero FIR, police cannot claim that they have no jurisdiction of the area where the offense has been committed. Second statement says zero FIR was introduced on the recommendation of Justice Verma Committee. So when I say FIR, it is First Information Report. And recently, from July 1st onwards, 3 new criminal laws are coming into effect. And in fact, these criminal laws clearly mandated that now the police station have to register zero FIR irrespective of jurisdiction where the crime has been committed. For example, imagine that the police station jurisdiction, there are two police stations, police station A and police station B, and both these police stations are located in different jurisdictions. Imagine that crime took place under the jurisdiction of police station B, but a person can file an FIR in police station A. Originally, the crime was not committed under the jurisdiction of police station A. This FIR is known as zero FIR. So once this FIR is filed, then police station A will transfer this FIR to police station B and then investigation will be initiated. So under these 3 new criminal laws, police cannot claim that they have no jurisdiction of the area where the offense has been committed. Yes, this statement is absolutely correct. And in fact, second statement, zero FIR was introduced on the recommendation of the Justice Verma Committee, and this statement is also absolutely correct. So after the Nirbhaya gang rape in 2012 in New Delhi, this Verma Committee was constituted, and this Verma Committee has recommended zero FIR irrespective of jurisdiction of the police station. So therefore, correct answer for this question, option C, both 1 and 2. Both 1 and 2 are the correct answer for this question. Now you can see the explanation here. So this zero FIR refers to, or this zero FIR refers to FIR, that is First Information Report, that is registered irrespective of the area where this offense is committed, where the crime was committed. So irrespective of the offense was committed, any person can file an FIR in any police station under a different jurisdiction, and that is the concept of zero FIR, right? So in this zero FIR, police station cannot refuse to file FIR saying that they have no jurisdiction over the offense. It is mandatory for the police to register zero FIR, and once they register FIR, then they would transfer this FIR to the concerned police station which has the jurisdiction over the offense. So therefore, first statement is absolutely correct in this answer. In fact, such a zero FIR is then later transferred to the police station, so that has the actual jurisdiction, so that the concerned police station will immediately start the investigation about the offense. In fact, so it was introduced on the recommendations of the Justice Verma Committee that was formed after 2012 Nirbhaya gang rape case in New Delhi. So therefore, by this explanation, we can infer that we can came to the conclusion that statement 1 and statement 2 are correct answers for this question. So today also I have another important practice question. So that is exercise My3. It is a military exercise. Exercise My3 is recently seen in news, and it is a joint military exercise conducted between which of the following countries? Option A, India and Myanmar. Option B, India and Thailand. Option C, India and Bangladesh. And option D, India and France. This is also easy and simple question. If you regularly follow current affairs, you can answer this question. Answer this in the comment section and I'll be providing you the correct answer in tomorrow's class. And now we'll start our discussion about few important articles which are in news, which are very important for the exam. The first article that we are going to discuss is about Article 361 and the immunity which is being provided to both president and the governor of the state. Now first we will understand the context why Article 361 and immunities of president and governor are in use. So it was because recently a woman from West Bengal who previously worked in Raj Bhavan in West Bengal approached the Supreme Court. She has approached the Supreme Court challenging the immunities granted to West Bengal governor. So current West Bengal governor was C.V. Anand Bose under Article 361 of the Indian Constitution. Under Article 361 of the Indian Constitution, certain immunities were granted to the president and the governors. So criminal cases cannot be filed against president and governor when they were in office. So that was clearly mentioned in Article 361 of the Indian Constitution. Rather, a woman who previously worked in Raj Bhavan recently moved to Supreme Court challenging the immunities granted to the governor under Article 361 of the Indian Constitution. Now, why she moved to the Supreme Court? She accused the governor of West Bengal, C.V. Anand Bose, of sexually assaulting her, and she argues that Article 361 should not prevent police investigation and criminal proceedings in such cases against the governor. Right? So this was the allegation that governor sexually assaulted her, and because of that reason she moved to Supreme Court. Even though she accused governor of sexual assault, governor cannot be arrested because under Article 361, governor enjoying certain immunities from the criminal cases. However, she challenged Article 361 and immunities which were given to the governor. Now, if you look into the left side image, that in India there is a provision for immunity of president and governors. Right? Indian Constitution has provided these immunities to the president and governor under Article 361. Right? So this particular article has provided both president and governor certain immunities. However, distinction can be made between acts done by them in public and personal capacity. Right? So governor or the president would be the public figure. However, a distinction can be made. So what are the acts considered as, which acts should be considered as personal acts and which acts should be considered as the public acts. For acts done or purported to be done by them in their public capacity, their immunity is absolute. Right? So they enjoy absolute immunity for the acts they were done in their public capacity, and no action lies against them in any court of law for any acts done by them in public capacity. However, with respect to acts done by them in their private capacity, so private capacity means that as individual, right? So there is no such immunity, but a suit would lie only if 2 months notice in writing has been delivered to them. Right? A 2-month notice have to be given to either president or the governor, stating the nature of the proceedings and the course of action. So this is what Article 361 has been about, the immunities to president and the governor. This is what Article 361 has been saying. Now again, if I can briefly tell you about this Article 361, it provides immunity to the President of India and Governor of States. So from initiating certain legal actions during the term of office. Now what is the term of office? So the term of office is until the pleasure of the President. right? So as long as they enjoy the pleasure of the president, they will remain as a governor of a certain state. In fact, the constitutional provision, Article 361, actually aims to safeguard the independent nature of the office of governor or the president, and at the same time the functioning of these two offices, so without any interference from the legal proceedings. Essentially, the objective of Article 361 is to make sure that the offices were safeguarded, the independence of the office is safeguarded, the functioning of the office is safeguarded, and that is the objective of Article 361 of the Constitution. Now, what are the key provisions under Article 361? Right? So, according to Article 361, Clause 2, no criminal proceedings can be initiated against president or governor of a state in any court during their term of office, right? So while they are serving as a governor of a state or a president, no criminal cases can be instituted against them or initiated against them in any court of law. So this immunity actually extend to actions taken in the course of their official duties. However, so again, I'm emphasizing here the intent of providing immunity to governor and the president is to safeguard their independence, safeguard the functioning of these high offices, right? So shield these officials from potential harassment or disruption, so which may be caused by legal challenges during their tenure. So that is the objective of Article 361 of the Indian Constitution. However, a woman who previously served in Raj Bhavan of West Bengal now approached Supreme Court demanding that the Supreme Court should actually start an investigation. I mean, Supreme Court should actually she challenged Article 361. Okay, so she challenged Article 361 because Article 361 providing immunity to the governor. So during his tenure, no criminal case can be filed against him. So that immunity was provided by Article 361 to the governor. So therefore, the woman who faced a sexual assault or harassment from the governor, so that was the allegation against the governor, challenged Article 361 and immunity provided to the governor under Article 361, right? So she also sought that there should be an investigation on this matter against governor because it was a criminal act, and because of that reason there is a need for investigation against the governor. However, Article 361 provides a shield to the governor, right? So in fact, immunity actually prevents criminal proceedings under Article 361. There should not be any criminal proceedings against the governor, and arrest warrant cannot be issued during their term also, right? However, one thing that we need to understand, there are some red lines also. It will not provide absolute impunity for all actions. Earlier we have understood about governor doing certain things in his public capacity and doing things in his private capacity, right? So in majority of the cases, immunity under Article 361 will be applicable for public acts of governor, but with respect to the acts which were done in the private capacity of the governor, 2-month notice have to be served, right? So private capacity, 2-month notice have to be served to the governor, mandating the nature of the proceedings which can be initiated against him or her. However, the immunity which is provided under Article 361, so it primarily covers the acts done in exercise of their official powers and duties, right? While performing their official duties, doing or performing their official powers, exercising their powers, such criminal proceedings cannot be initiated against the governor. In fact, it does not shield them from prosecution once they leave office. For example, imagine that a governor served for 5 years, and after 5 years they no longer be a governor of a state. So once they leave their office, then this immunity will not be extended to the ex-governors or former governors, right? A criminal proceedings can be initiated against the former governors also. So therefore, it does not shield them from the prosecution once they leave the office, and nor does it extend to actions clearly outside the scope of their constitutional responsibilities. Imagine that a criminal proceeding, or there are some allegations and accusations against the governor or the president, but those allegations and accusations are serious in nature. So they are very serious in nature, and they are not at all related to the constitutional responsibilities of the governor and the president. Now in that case, criminal proceedings may be initiated against the governor, because such accusations are done in personal capacity of the governor. Okay, so those actions which are done in the personal capacity of the governor, but they will not come under the public acts of the governor. Okay, so Article 361 of the Indian Constitution actually very important, right? So because it safeguard president and governors, and it also shield them from certain legal actions during their term in office. So presently, because of the center state conflict, or the differences between the center and state, so there is a chance that such cases may be filed against the governor. So therefore, Article 361 actually provides certain immunity, and it would also safeguard governors, right? So they can also deliver their duties and exercise their powers without any fear. So therefore, Article 361 is very, very important in this context. However, to what extent the immunity under Article 361 covers the actions of the governor or the acts of the president? So it is actually subjected to legal scrutiny and also interpretation as well. So there is a need for the larger interpretation. To what extent this immunity covers the acts of president, acts of the governors, especially in cases where the allegations were serious against the governor or the president, right? So we will briefly understand the role of governor. So in fact, governor is a constitutional head at the state level. How president is the constitutional head at the central level, in a similar way, governor is the constitutional head or executive head at the state level. And in fact, Article 153 and Article 154 of the Indian Constitution mentions about the governor or the office of the governor. So just remember, Article 153 and Article 154 talks about the office of the governor, and he is the executive head or the constitutional head of the state, and in fact he also plays a very important role as an executive head at the state level. So we will understand certain executive powers of the governor. So what are the executive powers that the governor generally or normally enjoys, right? So Article 153, 154, right? So Article 154 talks about the governor holds executive powers of the state, and they will be exercised directly or through subordinate officers in accordance with the constitution, and this is what Article 154 talks about with respect to governor. However, there's also another article, Article 163. So Article 163 clearly mentions that he is a constitutional head. Governor is the constitutional head. Governor is a constitutional head, And in fact, governor also acts on the aid and advice of the council of ministers. So at the state level also there is a council of ministers, and this council of minister heads the governor in performance of his duties, right? So governor in fact take decisions as per the aid and advice of the council of ministers. So this specifically includes duties such as summoning and proroguing of state legislative assemblies, promulgation of ordinances under Article 213. So he promulgate ordinances when the two houses of the state legislature is not in session, and he also give assent to the bills once those bills are passed by the state legislative assembly, and he also appoints the council of ministers. And these are the major functions of the governor under Article 163. However, so along with the executive functions, governor also enjoys certain discretionary functions also. Not just executive functions, he also enjoys certain legislative functions, judicial functions, and also executive functions. So along with that, there are certain discretionary functions also generally governor enjoys. So what sort of a discretionary functions? The governor generally exercises discretion on certain matters. So matters such as sending reports to the president under Article 356, right? So for example, under Article 356, president rule can be imposed in a particular state in case if there is a failure in the constitutional machinery of the state. Governor can normally recommend imposition of president rule in that particular state. Now, apart from Article 356, there is also another article, Article 365. So if states fail to comply with the orders given by the center, then also this president rule can be imposed in that particular state. So this is essentially to protect integrity and unity of the state. One thing that we need to understand here, when you compare the position of center with respect to the states, center is comparatively much more stronger. But with respect to states are, in India, states are just formed for the administrative convenience. They just formed for the administrative convenience. So they did not formed as per an agreement, right? So they are not equal, they do not enjoy equal powers and responsibilities like a central government. So because of that reason, in India, so we call these federal setup as a sui generis model of federalism, or a unique model of federalism, or it is also called as quasi-federal, right? It is also called as quasi-federal. So that is indestructible union of destructible states. So something like that, but center have more powers compared to the state governments. So Article 356, governor enjoys certain discretionary powers, sending reports to the president over different aspects about the administration and governance of the state. And apart from that, governor can also reserve bills for the consent of the president. Certain bills which are passed by the state legislative assembly, so which may threaten the position of the high court, and which may comes in conflict with the directive principles of state policy, so which may impact unity and integrity of India. So in all those cases, governor will not give his assent to those bills, rather he reserve the bill for the consideration of the president under Article 254 clause 2 of the Indian Constitution, right? So these are some of the powers that the governor enjoys. And whenever you write an answer about the office of the governor, it is very important, and it is also expected that a student must write these articles in the answer. So now we'll proceed on to next important article. So recently, so Niti Aayog launched this Sampurnata Abhiyan, right? So if we talk about this Sampurnata Abhiyan, first and foremost, what is this Niti Aayog? National Institutions for transforming India. So that is Niti Aayog, and it was established in 2015 January. Right, so National Institution for Transforming India, and Niti Aayog is just an executive organization, or it was just formed through an executive order. It replaces the erstwhile Planning Commission in India. Right, so this Niti Aayog essentially formed for the purpose of ensuring cooperative and collaborative federalism. Cooperative and collaborative federalism was the objective of this Niti Aayog. And apart from the cooperative and collaborative federalism, so Niti Aayog is also a think tank. Right, so this is a think tank with a lot of expertise over making recommendations with respect to policies, evaluation and assessment of these policies, and reformulation of the policies, right, for the development, a holistic and comprehensive development, and at the same time ensuring that the states voices are better heard at the national level. So all these things are the major responsibilities of the Niti Aayog, and it is a think tank. Right, so when we talk about this Niti Aayog's Sampurnata Abhiyan, we will understand context first, and then we'll discuss it in a detailed manner. So in a concerted effort to achieve holistic and comprehensive development, so across aspirational districts. Now what are these aspirational districts? Right, so union government, especially Niti Aayog, has announced that in India there are around 112 aspirational districts. Right, so what are these aspirational districts? These districts are backward districts, most backward districts in India, and these districts were affected by the left-wing extremism. These districts were affected by left-wing extremism or insurgency, and they are also most backward districts in India. So backward in the sense that the infrastructure backwardness, economic backwardness, lack of infrastructure, essentially the educational and healthcare infrastructure, and incomes and livelihoods were not significantly developed in those states. Right, so people have been facing a lot of problems because of the backwardness of these districts, and therefore these are aspirational districts. In India we have 112 aspirational districts. So Niti Aayog has launched this ambitious Sampurnata Abhiyan for the comprehensive and holistic development of these aspirational districts in India, and in fact it is a nationwide campaign. And this particular campaign, Niti Aayog's Sampurnata Abhiyan, is a nationwide campaign, and this campaign aims to address certain social sector indicators. Now when I say social sector indicators, healthcare would comes under social sector, education, sanitation and hygiene, drinking water, housing, electricity, basic connectivity, agriculture. So all these areas are community development, all these areas are social sector. The Sampurnata Abhiyan essentially aimed at development of all these social indicators in the most backward districts or aspirational districts. Right, so this Sampurnata Abhiyan will be implemented in 500 aspirational blocks and 112 aspirational districts across the country. Now we'll look into the details of the Sampurnata Abhiyan. Sampurnata Abhiyan is focused initiative, and that aim at achieving saturation in 12 critical social sector indicators. Right, so there are 12 critical areas education comes under it: healthcare and sanitation, drinking water, agriculture, connectivity, livelihoods. So all these things comes under the critical social sector indicators. So therefore this Sampurnata Abhiyan will essentially focuses on these social sector indicators and improving the standard of living and livelihoods of the people who are living in this 112 aspirational districts in India. Right, aspirational districts in India. Now when I say aspirational districts, the examples are like districts in Chhattisgarh, Jharkhand, Odisha and northern Andhra Pradesh. So those districts are left-wing extremism affected districts, and these districts are covered under the aspirational districts program of Niti Aayog. So this program was launched by Niti Aayog, and you just remember that thing. And in fact, as I've already told you, that these 12 critical social sector indicates, or it includes, healthcare, nutrition, agriculture, social development and education, right? So these are the crucial sectors, and this Sampurnata Abhiyan will essentially focuses on holistic development of all these essential and important sectors. And this campaign, the Sampurnata Abhiyan of Niti Aayog, designed to run for 3 months from June to September, right? So from June to September this campaign will be it will run, engaging district and block officials along with the elected representatives. So this will organize a series of awareness and development activities in all these 112 aspirational districts across India, right? So it actually targets 12 key social sector indicators, as I have already told you. Now when I say these 12 key social sector indicators, the most important social sector indicators, one among them is health and nutrition. Health and nutrition is one of the very important sector. So therefore, as part of this social sector indicator, health and nutrition, health camps will be organized, and Paustik Ahar Melas. For Paustik Ahar Melas, in the sense that nutritious food, okay, so nutrition rich food or nutritious food melas will be organized for better healthcare and nutrition outcomes in these aspirational districts program. Now again, I can tell you that in India, more than half of women have been facing the problem of anemia, right? So they have been suffering with the problem of anemia. So since more than 50% of the women have been suffering with the problem of anemia, then if you look into these tribal belts, especially the aspirational districts, the burden is much more highest. So one of the reason was the food was lacking essential nutrients, and that is the reason for high anemia burden, right? So in order to eradicate this anemia burden and other diseases which are associated with the food, Niti Aayog Sampurnata Abhiyan will focus on conducting or organizing health camps and Paustik Ahar Melas also. And secondly, agriculture and rural development is also a very important area to be focused upon, because these tribal belts, or especially the aspirational districts, have a lot of potential in cultivation of pulses and millets, right? So there is an increased demand for these pulses and millets, and if we focus on improving the productivity of these crops, then that would substantially increases the income of the farmers in these aspirational districts, and it would also improve their living standards also. So therefore, this Sampurnata Abhiyan will essentially focuses on sustainable farming practices and their promotion in these aspirational districts. And apart from that, social development in the sense that it will focus on Gram Sabhas. So as per the 73rd Constitutional Amendment Act, it has provided that there should be a Gram Sabha at the Panchayat level, and this Gram Sabha should also be regularly constituted to hear the grievances of the people who are part of that particular village. However, in tribal belts, Panchayat extension to the Scheduled Areas Act of 1996 also provided for the establishing of or setting up of Gram Sabhas. So therefore, these Gram Sabhas will be regularly conducted, and Nukkad Nataks a form of traditional nataks through which the awareness among the people can be created. So these are some innovative methods, especially nukkad nataks and all India radio news and cultural events to foster community development. So this will also be undertaken as part of this Sampurnata Abhiyan of Niti Aayog. And education and skill development, especially the vocational skills and vocational training, is also very important. So therefore this will be another area that should be focused under this Sampurnata Abhiyan by Niti Aayog. So overall, Niti Aayog under Sampurnata Abhiyan will focus on all these aspects in a holistic and comprehensive manner, and that aimed at the faster development of 112 aspirational districts and significant improvement in their living standards. So we'll proceed on to the next important article. This is with respect to the climate action or India's climate agenda going ahead, especially in the backdrop of new government came to power after this general elections. Now first we'll understand the context of this article. So the context is that the new government settles in after this general elections. Now what is the plan of this new government to scale up climate action? So it is very important that the government must scale up its climate action, because climate change is a challenge in this 21st century. So therefore there is a need for a concerted and collective action to deal with the negative impacts of climate change. So therefore, how can this new government can actually scale up climate action will be an important question here, because the climate action is not just concerned with the Ministry of Environment, Forest, Climate Change. Rather, it impacts the functioning of every ministry, whether new ministry or old ministry. And with respect to economy, it also impacts every sector, big sector, a small sector. It impacts agriculture, it impacts industry, and even it impacts the service sector also. However, in this context, so it is very important that we need to make some structural changes to make sure that we our growth is green in nature, our growth is green growth, and the economic growth and economic development would be balanced with the environmental concerns and sustainable development, right? So our way of developing our economy should be a sustainable way, right? So in fact, if you look at India in recent times, so India is very often seen itself as the leader of the global south, right? So since India is seen as a leader of global south, and when we talk about this global south, so most of these countries in the global south, in South America, Africa, South Asia and Southeast Asia, so most of these countries have been facing common challenges in the sense that high levels of poverty, unemployment, and infrastructure backwardness. So infrastructure backwardness is also another challenge that these countries have been facing. Poor living standards, right? So I hope it is clear that these are the major challenges that the global south, countries in the global south will actually facing. GDP per capita is also very low in these countries, and along with the GDP per capita, not the least, the most important challenge that the countries in the global south have been facing is the increased vulnerability to the disasters. So this is the major challenge that the countries in the global south have been facing, especially when you look into the global south. So most of these countries are either developing countries or underdeveloped countries, right? So they are either developing countries, underdeveloped countries, and least developed island nations, right? So these countries also have a lot of population. But even though they have a lot of population, they don't have adequate technology, and they also don't have the finances, right? So when we talk about the climate change, technology and finances are very important for adaptation and mitigation of the negative impacts of climate change, adaptation and mitigation are very, very important with respect to dealing with climate change and negative impacts of the climate change. However, if they wanted to reduce their vulnerability and escape negative impacts of climate change, they must do something with respect to adaptation and mitigation. But this adaptation and mitigation requires technology and finances, but these developing countries lack adequate technology and finances to undertake the adaptation and mitigation. And therefore, since India very often claims itself as the leader of the global south, at the highest tables across different international platforms, so it is very important that India should fight for the climate finance and climate justice over the next 5 years, especially on behalf of these countries in the global south. So India is very often in recent times, if you look at India in recent times, it has been becoming a leader in the climate with respect to climate change. It has becoming a leader. Now, if you look into the India's transformation in recent times, so earlier times, India was largely hesitant to involve in any developments with respect to global climate change or climate change discourse. So India was generally shy away from such developments. But in recent times, India has been taking much more bolder positions, and it is ready to share it is ready to shoulder the burden of climate change, and at the same time it is also taking up the leadership position when we talk about the climate change and developments which are associated with the climate change. And in fact, so when we talk about climate change in India, so India is actually one of the country which has launched number of international organizations specifically with respect to the climate change, such as International Solar Alliance, a very important. So this was launched by both India and France together. And after that, Coalition for Disaster Resilient Infrastructure was also launched by the government, and Global Biofuel Alliance, right? So Global Biofuel Alliance was also launched during recent G20 summit. And in fact, it has also shaped Green Development Pact under India's recent G20 summit presidency last year 2023. So this is how India has been getting involved in this climate change and developments which are related to climate change, and assuming the position of leadership in the climate change related matters. However, for the first time, India even started talking about the bolder and more ambitious emission mitigation targets, right? So it is very important that we need to mitigate emissions as early as possible, because when we talk about emissions, most of the industries or vehicles have been using fossil fuels, and these fossil fuels releasing carbon into the atmosphere, and carbon is a greenhouse gas, and that will lead to the global warming. Okay, so that actually leads to global warming, and this global warming in turn contributing to the climate change, right? So in return contributing to the climate change also. And in fact, so India has been started talking about more bolder and more ambitious emission mitigation targets, right? So when we talk about this, India recently announced Panchamrut targets, right? So Panchamrut targets were announced by Prime Minister Narendra Modi in his Glasgow summit. Prime Minister Narendra Modi announced this Panchamrut targets. So under this Panchamrut targets, one of the target was becoming net zero by 2070. Okay, so we will become net zero by 2070, and apart from that, several ambitious targets were announced by Prime Minister Narendra Modi, such as 500 gigawatt of energy will be produced from non-fossil fuels, and 50% of total energy will be generated from renewable sources. And apart from that, we will reduce the carbon intensity of our economy by 1 billion tons by 2030. 1 billion tons by 2030. So all these commitments were announced by Prime Minister Narendra Modi in Glasgow summit. So they have been indicating that India is now much more ambitious and much more committed to act on climate change as a responsible country, right? So to contribute for the mitigation of climate change. So apart from India, there is a need for other countries to act in such a bold manner, right? So in fact, sustainability must be linked with the domestic economic policies, so that we can balance the economic growth and development with the sustainability of the environment, right? So now when we talk about the economic growth, right? So economic growth requires energy resources. It requires energy. So since it requires energy, and India also, the demand for energy has been rapidly growing, and therefore we have been using a lot of coal for generating electricity. And when we burn coal, and this in return generating carbon into the atmosphere, and that further resulting in the global warming, right? So therefore we have to emphasize on economic growth and development, but there is no doubt about that. We need to emphasize on economic growth and development, but along with that, we should also focus on developing renewable energy resources simultaneously, and that is very important here, right? So creation of Indian emission carbon trading scheme, right? So there is a carbon trading scheme also. So this scheme also aimed at offsetting the carbon emissions by the companies. Okay, so companies can actually reduce the emission of carbon into the atmosphere. For that particular purpose, Indian emission carbon trading scheme was launched. And in fact, it is an institution that should operate at least 30 to 40 years, is a case in point, or it is about to be launched in a large scale. However, in the next 5 years, the government must accelerate and must show the world that economic development can be sustainable too, right? So through India's development path, where we balance economic growth and development along with the sustainability, so we must be an example for the rest of the world, that so we can achieve significant levels of economic growth and development along with balancing the environmental sustainability also. However, India should follow the mantra of go higher, go wider, and go deeper to align its climate leadership with the economic progress, right? So along with its economic progress, we should also align the climate leadership, right? So we need to take this side by side, both climate action and also the economic growth and development, right? So what should be the plan for India going ahead in the future? So when the author says go higher, so go higher relates to India's global leadership with respect to climate change and global sustainability. And in fact, it is expected that India could host important summits in the future, specifically with respect to climate change and global environmental conservation and protection, right? So it is expected that in 2028, India would host the United Nations flagship summit of Conference of Parties, right? So COP will be hosted by India in 2028, right? So United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. So that will be expected. India is expected to host this particular summit in the year 2028, right? So in fact, it is also expected that India would lead this United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, COP, in a similar way like the success of G20 summit. However, so India want that the world agrees to a new investment in oil and gas after 2030 as part of the decision next. Now see, the major question is that whether we should bring in new investments into the oil and gas, because when we explore and use oil and gas, so they release significant amounts of carbon into the atmosphere, However, there is no such consensus at the global level. Rather, the countries have been looking to ensure that there should be no new investments in oil and gas from after 2030 onwards, so that we can limit temperatures below 2 degree Celsius by 2100. So that will protect the planet from the extinction, or the major threat that the planet would face if temperatures go beyond 2 degrees Celsius. And in fact, so what about the adaptation and mitigation finances? As I have already told you that in global south, most of these countries are poor and underdeveloped countries. They lack technology and finances. However, with respect to reducing climate change vulnerability, adaptation and mitigation is very important, and that requires finances and technologies. So therefore, how India would convince the global north, so that the developed countries would provide adequate finances and technology to the developing countries in the global south, so that they can deal with themselves, they can deal with the increasing intensity and frequency of these heat waves, storms and floods, droughts, right? So in fact, it is also expected that it will take at least 4 to 5 years to achieve the consensus on these contentious issues over a period of time, because there is no consensus, and the developed countries are also not ready to provide finances and technology to the global south or developing countries or least developed countries, and there is no consensus, and it will take some more time to achieve such consensus. So alongside with that, India should continue doubling down on the narrative of equity in international forums, right? So India should commit itself to secure the finances and technology for the developing countries and least developed countries for adaptation and mitigation of climate change and these disasters, of which the frequency and intensity has been significantly increasing. Especially at the global platforms, India continues to raise its voice and concerns of the global south. Now, when the author says go wider, it actually means that India has to adopt and communicate the sectoral emission reduction targets, and they can go beyond the power sector. So it should not just focus on power sector. Rather, with respect to power sector, India has already achieved a significant progress, especially reducing the dependence on coal and developing renewable energy resources, unconventional resources of energy. And it is also expected that India will continue to do so on this front over a period of time. And India has also been putting in a lot of efforts to reduce its dependence on the fossil fuel related energy. So therefore, reducing the emissions also that are being generated by the fossil fuels when we use them for producing electricity. And we are also significantly increasing our renewable energy capacities over a period of time, right? So this nationally determined contributions for 2035 due to be submitted next year, and it can be an opportunity for going wider with India's energy transition targets. Now India can announce much more ambitious targets in this nationally determined contributions 2035. And apart from that, there is a need for state level plans. It is also important because we have a federal setup. So in this federal setup, it is very important that we need to cooperate and collaborate with the respective state governments to achieve the targets in a much more efficient manner. Okay, so in fact, there was a Council on Energy and Environment, Water, and this particular institution has been working across many states in India to support their net zero plans. So we wanted to become net zero by 2070. So therefore, it is also important that all states are on board and they are working in sync with each other to achieve the goal of becoming net zero by 2070 through long-term climate and energy modeling across different states. So therefore, in this respect, so government should think about creating center state coordination group, so that will ensure coordination between center and various state governments. And for example, if any state government has been taking certain climate actions, so those climate actions must be incentivized by the 16th Finance Commission, right? So 16th Finance Commission must incentivize the climate actions undertaken by the different state governments. In its terms of reference, the 16th Finance Commission can announce certain incentives, certain concessions for these state governments. And apart from that, it is very important that we need to promote integration of this scientific modeling capabilities in policy making. We need to use data, we need to use evidence for the policy making, policy evaluation and assessation, policy assessment. And we should also facilitate a unified data measurement, reporting and verification architecture at the state level. So all these things have to be done in a letter and spirit, so to achieve the targets and to achieve a green growth and to balance economic growth development along with the sustainability. So next important article is about the computer literacy in India, and that how that needs a reboot. Now, in fact, in India, the computer literacy is very low. So despite there were efforts by the government in recent times to reduce the digital divide that was existing, especially after the COVID-19 pandemic. So government has been undertaking certain efforts to reduce digital divide between male and female and between rural and urban areas, right? So this digital divide is actually means that a lack of skills and lack of literacy among the people who are living in different parts of one particular region. For example, imagine that in urban areas more people have the digital literacy, or they have the skill and capability to use these digital devices in a much more effective manner compared to a woman in the rural area. So that is the digital divide. So therefore we need to bridge this digital divide. In order to bridge digital divide, computer literacy or digital literacy is very, very important. Now in this respect, when we look into this particular article, the context is that recently National Sample Survey data has shows us that the computer literacy in India stands at only 24.7%, and that this is significantly lower, right? So this is especially among the individuals who are aged 15 and above, right? So however, within this 24.7% of the digital literacy or the computer literacy, the rural areas are still lagging behind. Rural areas have only 18.1% of the computer literacy. So this is indicating there is a huge digital divide that was existing between the rural and urban areas, right? So because of this digital divide, there is a huge risk of exclusion of people from the digital public services if they don't have the awareness about the digital services that are being provided by the government in a digital manner. And in fact, recent COVID-19 pandemic has actually highlighted the importance of computer and internet access for everyday tasks. So in fact, due to COVID-19 pandemic, what happened? There was lockdowns and schools were not opened, offices were closed, many people lost employment, and work from home has got a lot of priority and importance. And after that, the online learning was also got a boost. So therefore, the COVID-19 pandemic has highlighted the importance of computer and internet access in everyday tasks. However, there is a need for serious measures, particularly with respect to universalization of digital literacy and rural India's population, right? So improving the digital literacy of rural India's population, which is nearly 70%, and that could face significant disadvantages in accessing the critical services. Now, what is the present scenario with respect to the digital literacy? Right, so Digital India campaign that was already launched by the Union government in the year 2015, so it actually had a mixed impact on the computer literacy rates across the country. So we cannot say that it has significantly improved digital literacy in India. So as I have already told you that this National Sample Survey Office, so this particular data has indicated that the computer literacy in India is just 24.7%, especially among people who are aged above 15 years. However, this actually represents an increase from 18.4% in 2017 and 18. Now in terms of digital payments, we are the leader at the global level, but in terms of digital literacy, we're still lagging behind. In 2017 and 18, the computer literacy was around 18.4%, but now it is just 24.7% only. Now in rural areas, computer literacy stands at only 18.1% compared to 39.6% in urban areas. So this is all data, very important that you should mention this data in your answers. Nearly 70% of people who are living in rural areas remain excluded from accessing digital services which are being provided by the union government. So therefore, in this respect, there is a need for cohort effect. Okay, so computer literacy actually peaks at 45.9% among 20 to 24-year-old people. So there's a huge computer literacy among people at this age group, but it actually drops to just 4.4% for 65 to 69-year-old. And even among the younger working age people who are in 20 to 39 year, the computer literacy is just 34.8% on an average. So therefore, it has been indicating that there is a need for a significant interventions to further increase the computer literacy. So therefore, it enables the people to access the digital services which are being provided by the government, right? So however, there is a huge variations in terms of computer literacy across different states in India, right? So when we talk about this, there were number of economically disadvantaged states like Assam, Bihar, Madhya Pradesh. So they have a very low rates of digital literacy, so that is around less than 30%. However, prosperous states like Kerala have more than 72.7% of the computer literacy. So therefore, it has been indicating there are a lot of disparities within the states, and therefore there is a need for a decentralized interventions to further improve the the computer literacy across different states. So therefore, bridging this digital divide actually requires a sustained efforts from the government, private sector and civil society. So this essentially pointing out towards the fact that there is a need for a multi-stakeholder involvement to enhance digital literacy and bridge digital divide. So in this context, we need to understand the basic causes. So there are certain causes and we must reduce those causes, right? So there is a lack of infrastructure and qualified teachers in schools, colleges, and there is also lack of adequate computer training because of lack of qualified teachers, right? So employment opportunities were also limited because they do not have adequate skills with respect to the computers or digital skills, right? So it has been creating digital divide and skill gap in the job market. And apart from that, there are also a lot of gaps in access and quality of computer education in the formal education system. Now, formal education system very often focuses on the conventional subjects, rather it neglects the computer education. So therefore, it is also very important that these conventional education system schools and colleges must prioritize the financial literacy also, computer literacy also, so that it will not lead to the social isolation and financial exclusion of people from the online services. And there is also lack of motivation and access to learning resources, especially among the older group of people. So this should be the targeted group of people. We must target people who essentially lacked this skills with respect to the computer literacy. However, what should be the way forward? So the way forward should be at school level itself, we must try to bridge the digital divide, right? So we have to impart computer literacy skills among the students at the school level, and we need to bridge the digital divide that was existing between rural areas and urban areas, and between different sections of the society within the rural areas. So for this, the government should allocate a substantial portion of resources, and those resources can be useful for the procurement of computers and providing training and recruitment of teachers who are well trained and well versed with this computer education. So right, so that would significantly reduces the digital divide. And old age people is one of the targeted section of the people. So therefore the old age people who are outside this formal education system should be targeted programs, should be targeted with adequate interventions. And apart from that, there is a need for the multi-stakeholder engagement to impart the computer literacy. Especially we need to talk about the various institutions including local government bodies, panchayats, non-governmental organizations. So they can actually play a very important role in imparting the digital literacy or the computer literacy, and they can also empower the older people by giving them the literacy skills. And apart from that, quality control and monitoring and regular assessment and evaluation of these interventions is also very, very important, so that we can come out with appropriate policies with respect to the digital literacy, right? So that's all in this lecture, and thank you so much. If you like a video, so please subscribe our YouTube channel and also like the video. Thank you.